fake news is one of the great barriers that stands against a community development. Because I think that here in Sudan, we go on social media a lot and we kind of depend on it when it comes to news about politics or social events or news about people or figures or concepts. And it's really hard to differentiate whether it's wrong or right, whether it's fake or true. Like, for example, a few days ago, I saw this post on Facebook that was talking about the concept of feminism. And they described it as a movement that wants to dominate men and control the world, which is really extreme, I think. And it's really sad that this concept, this very wrong, violent, extreme concept, is going to be delivered to so many people on social media, and some of them may actually believe that it's true.
Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Ben and this is The Color of Innovation, brought to you by the United Nations Development Programme. In this show, we cover stories of innovation from across the Arab states. In each episode, we examine some of the most pressing development challenges in the region, through the voices of everyday people, social innovators, and of course, our colleagues who are pushing the boundaries of development to find new solutions. The term fake news has grown in popularity in the recent years, particularly after the 2016 elections in the US. But as a phenomenon, it's nothing new. Disinformation and propaganda has been used by political actors and organizations as long as they have existed. But the rise of social media and other new communication technologies has introduced new elements for both spreading and countering fake news. In today's episode, we will discuss how social media and other news sources are frequently used to spread false narratives, and how new technologies such as artificial intelligence can be harnessed to counter this misinformation. With the advent of social media, these new platforms are being used to spread false information fast and wide, sometimes having unforeseen consequences on events and individual lives. But on the flip side, there's a growing community of data scientists and development practitioners that are using artificial intelligence, that is, computers performing tasks commonly associated with humans, to stem the spread of such misinformation and fake news. One such initiative is Tanhib by the Qatar Computing Research Institute. This initiative tries to identify fake news and inform users of the political biases of news sources that might not be obvious or immediately apparent. To find out more about the project and how AI can aid in countering misinformation, I spoke with Dr. Preslav Nakov, who is leading the project at QCRI. Welcome on the show, Dr. Nakov.
Thanks for inviting me.
So, as I understand, you're leading a project that aims at developing a news aggregation application to limit the effects of fake news, propaganda, and media bias. One that would help readers step out of their bubble and achieve a more healthy news diet. Would you say this is a fair summary of your project?
Yeah, that's correct. So, of course, when people now talk about fact-checking and fake news, they're mostly interested in what's going on in the media, right? And we started a project where we were building a news aggregator that has some fact-checking capabilities. The idea is to make people aware of what they're reading. So basically what we are doing, we are building profiles for the different media so that people can go and see what are the biases of those media. Are they left-leaning, right-leaning? Are they extreme left, extreme right? Do we believe that they are factual in their reporting? What is their stance on different topics, let's say climate change or gun control, things like that. And we also signal as people are reading that some particular article might be propagandistic.
So I know a lot of people nowadays actually want to avoid the term fake news as it's used in different ways for different purposes. But I would still like to hear your take on this, and perhaps if you could elaborate on what it means to you.
Sure. Actually, I like that you are asking this question because people have been talking a lot about fake news, right? And this kind of misleads the communication. It goes in the direction, kind of puts the stress on the fact that they're false, right? And many people, when they're talking about fake news, this is what they think. But the main problem of fake news is not that they are false. The main problem that people worry about them is that they are used as a political weapon, right? That they are weaponized. And this is thanks to two properties that social media have. One of them is that people can share content, so basically they can become viral. I like to say that fake news are like spam on steroids. And first of all, 70% of the people cannot tell apart true from false news. Second of all, fake news actually, false information spreads 6 times faster than real content. This is according to a big study done by MIT. Another thing is they're really viral. So, and it's very, very important to detect them very, very early on, so that when something new gets published, we can immediately tell you whether it's likely to be true or not based on past information, based on our analysis. And I like to say that we can fact check the news before they were even written. It's like in the movie Minority Report. The second aspect of the fake news, right, is that, it's connected to the fact that in social media you can be profiled and you can be basically targeted with information, with news that is designed specifically for you and with a specific intent to press a particular button on you, to make you do something.
So when it comes to fighting and identifying fake news with the help of AI, can you explain to people who are not data scientists how these systems or the algorithms that they are based on, how they work? Because there's a criticism of there being an inherent bias in the systems that are being developed or used, or the data that you are putting into them. So maybe kind of open up what kind of variables should be taken into account when designing these systems, and based on what kind of variables are the news sources then ranked?
Those are very good questions. So let me first kind of say about how we decide what kind of features, what kind of things our algorithms are looking at, and then I can come back to the question of trust, which is very, very important. So what we are doing is obviously we are analyzing the content of media, how they write, what they write, the kind of language that they're using. Are they using too many emotional words? Are they kind of subjective? Are they discussing moral categories like religion or ethnicity? Are they, or topics like war and so on and so forth? Another thing that we are doing is we are analyzing, this is fully automatic, of course, what is there about them in Wikipedia. Because in many cases in Wikipedia, there is very good information about the bias or the factuality of different media. Another thing that we are looking into how users react to what is being published in social media and what kind of users those are. So, for example, we are analyzing what kind of users are reading those media. Are they mostly conservative, mostly liberal, mostly center-oriented users? So those are the kinds of things that we are using to try to predict the bias and the factuality of reporting of media. Now, the question of trust is very, very important. And how do we know that our system is doing the right thing? And actually, how do we, when we are training it, right, we need to give it examples. Look, here's one, news outlet, and it's factual, or it's kind of, let's say, center-left bias. And here's another one that is kind of, hyper-partisan, extreme right, and it's kind of, factually kind of questionable, and so on and so forth. And we are giving thousands of examples like that to our system, and it learns, kind of tries to understand what kind of characteristics media with different bias and different factuality have. So what we are doing is we are taking gold annotations from a website called Media Bias Fact Check, which is the most authoritative source that I'm aware of They have like 2,700 sources already manually analyzed. But of course, it's true that if you go there and if you look into the kinds of media that are judged extreme or the kinds of media that are judged as factually not true, those are primarily right-leaning media. Now, the question is this how the data is? Is this how the reality is? Or is it that there is a bias? And frankly, which of those is true, I don't know. To me, as a researcher, I just have to trust something. So at the end of the day, we take what people believe is good data, is good judgments, and they do have bias.
Okay, thank you very much. Moving to a broader perspective, maybe you can comment on what's your opinion on the situation regarding the spread of misinformation in the Middle East, including future and current trends. Maybe we can touch upon the topic of challenges and your opinion on how well people are aware of the problem within the Arabic-speaking world and how well they are equipped to counter this specific challenge.
The biggest problem actually is that we don't know whether the quality is good or not, because this kind of analysis of media in the Middle East has not been done for Arabic, this website, Media Bias Fact Check. There have been others. They have been primarily focusing on Western media and primarily on English language media. Another problem is that if you're looking into bias, right? So the primary bias that we are looking into has been left or right, and those are not actually universal notions. So what is left and right in the Middle East is, something that probably doesn't even make sense in the political system of some countries. The point is that things are complex, and there's let's say, left and right. There's a social. It has a social aspect. It has an economic aspect. It has domestic politics aspect. It has foreign politics aspect, and so on and so forth. All these kind of things, are different from country for country and from region to region. And actually, the biggest problem that we have in the Arab region is that there has been not that much such analysis done. So there's not data that we can actually learn from so that we can build systems that would be good specific for the region.
Are there any specific steps or actions that you would like to see being done by states, organizations, or individuals, for example, regarding the lack of data?
It's a very complex problem, and there's no easy solution to it. There's no easy technological solution. There's no easy government solution. There's no easy, if you want, education solution. So I believe that it's a very complex problem that has many different sides, and the solution to it should come from many different directions. And educating the users is something very, very important, and this is what the primary goal of our RTMP project has been to raise awareness, because propaganda becomes inefficient the moment you are aware of it, right?
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Nakov. It's been a pleasure.
Sure, thank you. Thanks for having me.
How then to apply these lessons in a development context? What we heard at the start of this episode was Eman Ali Abam talking about her experiences of the spread of false narratives in Sudan. Continuing with Sudan, my colleague Ali Muntasir from UNDP Sudan is working on a program called Partnering Against Violent Extremism, or PAVE, where they are looking at the root causes of violent extremism as well as how young Sudanese get drawn into extremist organizations, especially how people who feel politically marginalized and socially isolated are targeted by recruiters and especially prone to misinformation and false narratives. Hi, Ali.
Hello.
Good to have you here. If we look at the current media, information landscape and environment, do you see a link between the behavior of people on social media or media in general and violent extremism in Sudan?
I have to admit that fake news or misinformation plays a really big role in how people behave. Behavioral change happens due to triggers in some of the media outlets or some of the way the news is portrayed. So people would act based on emotional bursts due to sensitivity. And this is one of the major aspects that come into the recruitment process in violent extremism. It tends to create emotions that are frustrating, anger, and it plays into the youth. Because youth are, by nature, trying to make a difference in the world. They have a lot of frustrations because there's a lot of issues that come into play, like unemployment. They have a sense of identity that they lack of identity, actually, is what I would like to say. And these issues that come that the youth are facing, these recruiters know how to tap into that. So they would send messages that are very clear, and they would target specific people. So people who have, so for instance, I'll give you an example. Someone who has family issues, who is alone, who can't find himself, doesn't know a lot about Islam, but he loves his religion and he loves the community, and what you would want is you want to give him a sense of belonging. You would want to send those kind of messages to him.
So you specifically pointed out that this is a problem with youth, and as they generally have a stronger online presence than other community members, they're more easily preyed upon online. Keeping this in mind, do you see the technology and new media as tools for providing solutions, or are they only the cause of the problem?
Okay, let me be very clear. I think these tools that are used by recruiters in violent extremism, or people, or the propaganda people in these violent extremist groups, they are much more advanced than us in using technology for their benefit. And I see it as a double-edged sword. So it can be a weapon they use against to recruit people, but we can also use to counter it. So definitely, there's a huge factor where we can leverage technologies and digitalization into how we can counter violent extremist narratives.
Yeah. Do you think that there's enough awareness on the topic?
I think that we need to, first of all, identify how and what are the messages that they bring out. We need to understand what is the messages that they're spreading, and we need to understand the tools that they're using as well. So if we understand how the tools that they use, we can definitely then go a step above them.
So you think there's a way for us to top their game?
Yes. One of those clear pathways is how we can leverage artificial intelligence, for instance. There's a huge amount of data that we can take into consideration, and then we can actually formulate counter narratives based on that information. So AI can be